You know, life has this strange way of exposing what you truly believe. It's easy to say, I trust God when everything is working, when the bank account is full, when the doors are opening. But trust doesn't live in convenience. Trust is born in crisis. Trust begins the moment you lose control. When your plans crumble, your strength fails, and your logic stops making sense. That's when heaven asks, do you still believe I am good? Every great transformation begins with the collapse of certainty. You see, when you truly trust God, you stop negotiating outcomes. You stop trying to manipulate timing. You stop begging for comfort, because trust is not about comfort. It's about conviction. Trust says, even if I don't see how, I know who. It's standing in the dark with unshakable calm because you know the one who commands the light. Trust is not passive. It's not waiting for things to get better. It's standing still when your emotions scream for movement. It's believing that silence is not absence. You have to understand, God doesn't perform to impress you. He moves according to divine timing, not emotional pressure. So when he delays, he's not denying you, he's developing you. Every unanswered prayer, every closed door, every delayed promise is training your spirit to depend on presence, not outcomes. There's a level of faith where you stop asking why and start saying thank you. Because real trust requires detachment. You cannot trust God while being emotionally addicted to results. You cannot say, Lord, I trust you, and still measure his love by what you receive. Detachment is not apathy, it's alignment. It's saying, I am not controlled by what happens to me. I am anchored in who holds me. You see, emotional detachment is the purest form of power. When you can lose and still feel whole, you've discovered divine stability. When you can walk away and still have peace, you've mastered trust. Detachment is not about not caring. It's about caring from clarity, not fear. It's the ability to move through pain without becoming pain, to walk through fire without burning your identity. Sometimes God will take you through storms not to destroy you, but to detox you, to strip away your dependence on things that were never meant to define you. You keep saying, God, show me your plan, and he's saying, show me your trust, because the plan is not hidden, it's withheld until you surrender. You cannot demand revelation while you still cling to control. Trust is not blind. Trust sees beyond. It sees beyond failure, beyond delay, beyond disappointment. It knows that the author of your story has already written the ending. So when things fall apart, maybe they're falling into place. When people leave, maybe they were never meant to stay. When doors close, maybe they were protecting you from rooms too small for your destiny. There comes a point where you stop chasing certainty and start embodying faith. You stop asking for signs and start becoming one. You stop crying for clarity and start living in confidence. Because trusting God is not about predicting outcomes. It's about protecting peace. And peace is the proof that trust is working. So when life gets loud, quiet your soul. When things fall apart, don't fall with them. When you lose what you wanted, remember who you're becoming. Because trust doesn't always change your situation. Sometimes it changes you. And when you've learned to trust God in every situation, you stop needing control because you finally realize you were never in control. And that's the most liberating truth of all. Trust is not passive. It's a posture of power. Too often, people mistake trust for waiting idly, as though trusting God means folding your arms and hoping for miracles to appear. But true trust is not a withdrawal from life. It's a stance, a position, a declaration that says, even if I don't have the evidence, I have the assurance. It's not laziness, it's leadership of the SRU. When you trust God, you're not avoiding responsibility. You are aligning yourself with divine intelligence, the kind that sees what you can't and knows what you don't. Trust is active faith. It is movement without fear, obedience without full understanding, and confidence without guarantees. It means you step forward, even when the ground beneath you still looks uncertain, because you know the one who commands the storm also commands the path. Power is not found in control. It is found in surrender that refuses to panic. Trusting God means standing firm when everything in your world trembles, speaking peace to your soul when your emotions wage war. It's a form of inner defiance against fear. When life presses you into uncertainty, the natural instinct is to act from desperation, to fix, to force, to rush. But trust interrupts that instinct. It whispers, be still. It reminds you that divine timing is not delayed timing. There is a rhythm in heaven that moves at a frequency beyond your perception, and your job is not to accelerate it. Your job is to stay in sync with it. That's where the power lies, in restraint, in patience, in belief that the unseen is working louder than the seen. Trust doesn't mean you stop working. It means you stop worrying. It doesn't mean you ignore effort. It means your effort is no longer driven by fear. The one who truly trusts no longer competes for control. They operate from conviction. They know that every setback has purpose, that every delay hides design, and that every loss refines strength. Trust transforms chaos into classroom, pain into preparation, and waiting into worship. It is not a retreat from reality, it is the mastery of it. To trust God is to choose composure over confusion, alignment over anxiety, and faith over force, because power is not in what you control, but in who you depend on. Detachment is not weakness, it's mastery. The moment you learn to let go, you begin to reclaim your power. People often assume that detachment means not caring, but that's a shallow understanding. Detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. It's the ability to love, to build, to believe without becoming enslaved to the outcome. When you can give your best and still be at peace with whatever happens next, you have reached a level of strength that fear can no longer manipulate. Detachment is the maturity of faith. It's knowing that you are responsible for your obedience, not for the results. There's a difference between involvement and attachment. Involvement means showing up with your whole heart. Attachment means tying your identity to the result. When your peace is dependent on outcomes, you become emotionally hostage to circumstances you cannot control. But when you detach, you rise above the noise. You begin to see that God's plan is not a negotiation, it's a revelation that unfolds in time. Detachment says, even if it doesn't happen my way, it will still happen His way, and that's enough. That mindset doesn't make you passive, it makes you powerful. Because the person who has nothing to prove and nothing to protect moves with freedom. Detachment is born in the fire of disappointment. You only learn to release what you once tried too hard to hold. You only discover peace when you've lost what you thought you couldn't live without and realized you're still standing. Every time life removes something you depended on, it's an invitation to depend on something higher. That's why spiritual detachment is a divine strategy. It breaks the illusion that control equals security. It teaches you that trust is stronger than attachment. When you can let go of what you wanted and still walk in purpose, you've matured beyond emotion. You've discovered alignment. Detachment allows you to operate with calm precision instead of desperate motion. It is the discipline of faith that says, my role is to move faithfully. The outcome is God's responsibility. The detached heart still loves deeply, but lives freely. It doesn't cling to people, plans, or timing. It clings to peace. Because when you detach from outcomes, you attach to truth. And in that truth, you find unshakable strength. Uncertainty is God's classroom for growth. It's in the unknown that your real faith is tested and revealed. You can't develop strength in comfort, and you can't discover divine wisdom in predictability. The unknown is where God shapes visionaries. It's where He dismantles the illusion of control and replaces it with conviction. When everything feels uncertain, heaven is not silent. It's strategic. God doesn't use uncertainty to confuse you. He uses it to construct you. Every question, every delay, every unanswered prayer is a tool to sharpen your discernment and deepen your dependence. Most people despise uncertainty because it threatens their sense of control. They want clarity before obedience, direction before decision, security before surrender. But God doesn't operate on human logic. He calls you to move before you understand, to trust before you see, to walk before the path is lit. The uncertainty is not punishment, it's preparation. It's how God builds spiritual muscles through moments that stretch your faith, expose your fear, and refine your focus. You don't grow when everything is certain. You grow when your soul has to lean on something greater than reason. Uncertainty forces you to choose what you believe about God. It makes you confront whether your faith is in His character or in your conditions. When you can't trace His hand, can you still trust His heart? When you can't see the outcome, can you still walk with confidence? Growth begins when you stop demanding answers and start embracing alignment. The purpose of uncertainty is not to make you anxious, it's to make you aware that your security never came from knowing what's next, but from knowing who's leading you. Every delay that frustrates you is often the disguise of divine timing. Every closed door is not rejection, it's redirection. Every unanswered prayer carries instruction, but you can't hear it if you're too busy panicking. In uncertainty, God teaches you to listen, to wait, to discern, and to mature. The unknown trains you to see beyond logic and to recognize that what looks like loss may be a lesson. You begin to realize that growth doesn't happen when life is certain. It happens when faith becomes your certainty. Faith is loudest in silence. It's easy to speak faith when life feels predictable, when your plans are unfolding the way you imagine. But the true measure of faith is not in your words, it's in your stillness. Silence tests what sound once declared. When you can stand in a moment where God seems quiet and still say, I believe, that's when faith becomes substance. The loudest faith is not the one that shouts at the storm, but the one that stands calmly in it. Because silence is not the absence of God, it's the environment where his voice matures within you. There are seasons when God withdraws noise to reveal depth. When your prayers seem unanswered, when doors stay shut, when nothing makes sense, that's not divine neglect, it's divine refinement. God often hides in silence to see if you're chasing results or relationship. The silence separates believers from seekers. It reveals who worships for what they receive and who worships because they believe. Faith in silence teaches you that trust is not built through explanation, but through endurance. It's the ability to remain steady when heaven feels still, to keep showing up when nothing seems to move, to keep believing when you can't feel anything changing. Silence is sacred because it strips away dependency on emotion. It forces you to rely on conviction rather than confirmation. That's why many people struggle in silent seasons. They mistake stillness for abandonment. But silence is not abandonment, it's alignment. It's God training your spirit to recognize his presence beyond your senses. When you no longer need constant signs or external encouragement to believe, you've entered the realm of mature faith. The silence becomes your teacher, not your tormentor. The power of faith is not in noise, but in knowing. The quiet strength that whispers, I'm still here, in the middle of delay, heartbreak, or uncertainty. That's where real faith lives. Faith doesn't need an audience, it just needs authenticity. It doesn't perform, it perseveres. It doesn't demand to see, it decides to stay. Silence refines the soul until your confidence is no longer in outcomes, but in the one who holds them. And when you learn to trust God in silence, you no longer fear the absence of answers. You rest in the assurance of his presence. Purpose will always demand surrender before manifestation. Before destiny is revealed, surrender is always required. You cannot walk in divine purpose while clinging to personal control. The greatest battle of faith is not between you and your circumstances. It's between your will and God's will. Purpose is not something you chase, it's something you align with. And alignment requires letting go. It means releasing your timelines, your expectations, your definitions of success, and allowing God to write the story his way. Every person who has ever fulfilled a divine calling had to first lay something down. The cost of purpose is always surrender. Surrender doesn't mean weakness, it means wisdom. It is the realization that you are not the author of your destiny, you are the instrument of it. When you stop trying to control everything, you create room for divine orchestration. The need to control is rooted in fear. Surrender is rooted in trust. When you surrender, you say, God, I don't need to understand it. I just need to obey it. That's where transformation begins. Because true purpose is not found in what you build for yourself, but in what God builds through you. And he can't build through you while you're still holding the blueprint. Surrender is often disguised as loss. When God removes certain people, closes certain doors, or delays certain opportunities, it's not to punish you, it's to prepare you. He's pruning your life for fruitfulness, not failure. But you can't see that until you stop resisting the process. The more you fight surrender, the more you delay clarity. Because God doesn't reveal the next step until you've released your grip on the last one. Every season of letting go is a lesson in trust, and every act of trust expands your capacity for purpose. There's a reason surrender precedes manifestation. Pride cannot coexist with purpose. If you still need to prove, control, or manipulate, you're not ready to lead. Surrender breaks your ego so that purpose can rise from purity. It empties your hands so they can carry what truly matters. Purpose begins the moment you say, not my will, but yours. That statement is not a loss of power, it's the awakening of it. Because when you surrender your plan, you unlock his, and his plan is always greater than anything you could ever design on your own. So when life shakes you, when uncertainty stretches you, when silence tests you, and surrender humbles you, remember this: trust is not a reaction, it's a revelation. It's the awareness that no matter what shifts around you, the foundation beneath you is unshakable. You were never meant to carry everything. You were meant to believe through everything. Every delay, every detour, every disappointment is still under divine direction. Stand still in faith. Move forward in confidence. Breathe deeply in surrender. Because when you trust God in every situation, you stop surviving life and start living it with divine certainty, knowing that every step, even the ones that don't make sense, are leading you exactly where you're meant to be.